All right, I've got a very exciting new type of podcast episode style called 2 for 2, 2 for 2, where we invite awesome guests onto the pod to share 2 social innovation ideas that will make the world better. And I exchange 2 ideas that I have. We have found folks that have, that journal where they write in and create tons of ideas. And what was getting at me is that there's a lot of great stuff being left on the cutting room floor. And by the way, if you are the type of person creating ideas for social impact, you're probably not going to be like the most territorial over them. And so I am so pleased when Jay Buys, co-founder of Visceral, reached out to be our first contestant guest on the episode, because we're going to be scoring these ideas too against a framework that we'll introduce later. But Jay, give us a quick intro, who you are, what Visceral is.
Thanks very much. So I am Jay Buys, co-founder of Visceral. We are a B Corp certified creative agency. So essentially we build brands and websites, but we work exclusively with organizations focused on some sort of social good. So a lot of nonprofits, foundations, other social enterprises and B Corps. Anyone who's trying to make the world better, we're trying to help you leverage modern communications to do it.
Oh, perfect creative guest to be up for it. So we will be hearing Jay's first idea and talking through it for 5 to 10 minutes, seeing how it goes, giving him a final score, and letting you know how he would actually start it, the first steps, the MVP in the end of this, of what that would look like. The framework we'll be talking about and thinking about, and I want you thinking about as you hear this idea and sort of kick the tires on your own ideas, is the impact. How's the world different because this idea would be in it? What is the viability, the financial viability of this thing? Do we have to, raise funds? Does it have a revenue generation element in it? And then finally, what is the depth versus breadth, scalability of this idea? Alrighty, Jay, kick us off. What's the first idea?
Okay, so I think this is a pretty dead simple idea. I hope, anyways, we're going to see. But when I bought my new Pixel phone a couple years ago, the first thing you do is, you customize it. And at the time, animated wallpapers were the cool new thing. So I went to the App Store and I bought one. I think it was about $1.99. It was this cool swirling galaxy animation. I'm a big space nerd, so that was exciting to me. And I had the thought, what if by buying this, just little wallpaper thing, a portion of that money could go to the Planetary Society, this organization that I'm a member of for years. I frequently donate to. And then I started thinking, well, we work with a lot of nonprofits. Wouldn't that be something that maybe other nonprofits would be interested in? So if you bought a cool roaring lion wallpaper, some of that money could go to the Wildlife Conservation Network. If you bought the animated beach tide rolling in, that money could go to the Surfrider Foundation, something like that. So pretty simple, pretty easy, but we'd be doing something that would funnel money to organizations that are doing something that aligns with the types of things that we're interested in.
I love this. So some questions first. It seems like this is a marketplace. So you have to enter the marketplace, or can you actually download wallpapers just directly to your phone if you have the right know-how to click a link and pull something on your phone?
So on an Android phone, you can download just any wallpaper. It might be a little bit different on an iPhone, but there are currently thousands of wallpapers in both the App Store on the iPhone and the Android store. So there's already stuff that's out there that exists. I think we tap into an existing market to basically do something that people are already doing, but just give them a way to do it better.
Mm-hmm. So you would hope to get listed in this marketplace and also maybe have a separate distribution avenue.
Yeah, and I think, you have a website to promote it, obviously, and I think one of the good things about it is that for the nonprofits that you'd partner with, it's sort of a win-win for them. There's no upfront investment for them. They probably already have assets, photos and videos that could easily be turned into wallpapers. And so there's a little or no barrier to entry for them. And then if it gets acceptance and downloads, is basically just funneling money directly back to them. So I think it'd be pretty easy to sell, to get nonprofits to buy into it, and also to get them to help do some of the promotion and marketing for it.
Mm-hmm. I love this. So let's talk about the impact of this. What is the upside? Why is the world a little different as this would exist? What do you see?
Essentially just funneling money to good causes, right? And I think there's a big appetite for people that want to make change, to affect change, to help, to support, to be on the right side of the line. But we also live in a world where everyone's busy, everyone's strapped for time and strapped for cash. So it's tough to always give back. And I think people also sort of feel that, if they can't make $1,000 donation, they can't make a difference. But, little gestures like this can add up in a really big and positive way. So if you look at some of the sort of just wallpapers that are in the App Store now, some of them have millions of downloads. So if we can get a couple million people to pay for something that's 99 cents, right, you're going to have to split some of that with Apple or Google because they'll take a percentage, and some of that could be funneled back into the company that makes the app. But, if you split it 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 for Apple and Google, 1/3 for the company, and 1/3 for the nonprofits, that's still $300,000 you could raise off just selling, a 99-cent app in the App Store.
I kind of have to admit, I thought this was so cheesy and like freaking like 2001 type until I really also started to parse through it and sort of tapping into these large revenue streams. We forget, we think that's like so insignificant. You're like, a freaking wallpaper, really? But one piece of impact that I think you lost in the narrative here is one of attention. When you turn on your phone, what are you going to see? You're going to see that tiger being saved because it's helping World Animal Protection or whoever it may be. You're actually creating a bit of an attention reminder, bringing that person back into a subtle familiarity to your organization every time they turn on the phone. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a one and done. There could be a wallpaper of the quarter, of the month, of the whatever it may be, that you bring people along a narrative journey via wallpaper. I also think I would have hated this idea if you were just saying shove it into a marketplace where you're competing against a billion other things. Like that is, where good things go to die and get lost, right? But if you're able to create a couple other avenues, and you kind of hinted at it, like your own marketplace for social impact wallpaper pieces, right? This is like, hey, you can go shop here for good for, silly things you want to rotate on your screen. And almost more importantly, it can be a fun little value add piece, a little digital goodie that a nonprofit could create a little sales page around, give it away for free, ask for people to donate on the back end, or just straight up just sell it as a fun thing. Like, hey, share this around. It'll, remind you of this this work we do. And it's especially good for organizations with tremendous visual assets. And obviously we gravitate toward animals because they have tremendous visual assets. All right, so strong points for me on that. I think the impact here has a lot of upside. Talk to me about the financial viability of this. How much does it take to, on the individual to create this type of company? What does that look like?
So the good thing about this, I think, is it's a relatively simple app to develop. There's app developing can get pretty complicated, as well as marketing and promotion and building a brand and a company around something like this. But for this, I think it's relatively simple in terms of the programming that you'd need to do. So you can hire someone to do the programming for you. I think minimal investment, or, for people that are already good coders, good designers that are looking for business ideas to take and run, you could probably, bang this out in a couple of weeks if you're able to write apps yourself. And so I think that the financial barrier here is pretty low. And I think the potential upside, you really only need a handful of people to staff this, really, or maybe just a partner with a small agency that could help you with some of the branding and marketing and that kind of stuff. And like I said, getting the nonprofits that you partner with to do some of the promotion for you, that's typically a big portion of your cost, right? Either buying social media ads or doing traditional marketing, things like that. So if you have a partnership with 50 different nonprofits, and they're all pushing it out on their social and their website and their channels, that's taking a lot of that upfront cost sort of off your plate, I think.
So there's a revenue model for the company, right? You start this up, it's a B Corp or a social good entity, and what you're doing here is also you're taking a cut of any wallpaper sales as part of that little whose hand is in the till for we generated this image for you. Now the promotion piece gets a little tricky here because you made a classic assumption that I love to poop on, which is that nonprofits are just itching to push out your stuff to their audience, even if it benefits them. This was this giant rise of affiliate marketing that I saw also for nonprofits, Amazon Smile, all these pieces. And the number of companies that came, sort of to us, to Whole Whale, to say look, we got this great idea. And all the charity does is once they have this link, they just have to send all of their people to it. They just send all their customers to this page and we'll give them points on it. Why wouldn't they do it? And they're so in the box when they think about that particular distribution point that they don't realize that like it's the last thing on earth a nonprofit's going to do. Their list and their communication cadence and availability is their most precious asset, and they're not about to throw that around for just anything. I'm not saying it wouldn't work, but it is the number one killer in terms of a marketing assumption that I push on there. But the thing would fair. Right, the thing would make money if people found it.
Yeah, that's the challenge with all these ideas, right? If you can get enough sort of marketplace acceptance and traction on it, then I think that it becomes a much easier sell. You know, it's always one of those, if you can go to a nonprofit and say, hey, we've raised, I don't know, $200,000 for this other nonprofit, and we've got proof that this works, that people are interested and people download, then it's an easy sale. But the beginning of it, I think
the marquee customer, you don't start with a marketplace, you start with a marquee customer. Okay. Talked about breadth scalability. This seems like a breadth play. It's fairly scalable. You create once, produce, and let it run everywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. What you said. Screen, they're reminded of it. They can, you know, you can push notification and say, hey, we've got this new wallpaper for this other organization that you might want to support. You know, just you know, and the good thing about mobile apps and things like this too, you just, you know, you pay with your fingerprint. There's no real barrier there. You don't have to go to a website and put in a credit card, things like that. It's really simple, really easy, really cost effective for people. You know, if they get like a little dopamine hit because they feel good about supporting something and they get some cool new widget on their phone, you know, easy peasy.
Yeah. Alrighty. Talk to me about how you would take the very, very first step or build an MVP of this, and what kind of numbers we'd be talking about.
So for me, if I had time, I would probably build it, because my background is actually in programming and development. So I would start to map out what the UI for this would look like and what a prototype would look like to build something like this out. If you didn't have programming background, I think you're reaching out to someone that can do that for you to try to create a minimum version of this. And so you'd need to raise probably, my gut says probably $20,000 to $30,000 for building a working version of this that you could then roll out.
Yeah, I'd probably hack at it a little bit more tighter with the actual end product. I would say, how do I create 10 wallpapers that are just dynamite for, you know, a given couple nonprofits, and just be like, hey, here's a direct sale, and how to like figure out the cleanest way to get that direct sale, and see if people would even do it in super users, and actually see what the feedback was on the product. Because I think it wins based on the quality of the image there. But I agree. Alrighty. So final scores here. Looks like a high startup cost, 1 out of 10. All right, what would you give this idea 1 out of 10? We can go back and edit. So this is the wallpaper. I'm gonna give you.
What would I give for startup cost?
Now I'm gonna give you I'm just a raw score out of 10. I'm gonna give you a 7.5 on this. I like the impact. The viability scares me because of the marketing angle. I think it's always tough to get the nonprofit sale, and I think that's where it is. And so either you have to generate the marketplace that is like organically finding it, and you're fighting in a market of bunch of people that are armed with full revenue from their wallpapers. I think it's easy enough to start up, but the app also scares me. So I'm actually going to push you to a 7. All right, what score do you give yourself?
What score do I give myself? Oh man. I was 7.5. I think it's, I've got a lot of ideas like this, and I'm excited to hear yours too. And this one to me is sort of the one that stuck in my head the longest, because I think it's relatively easy, not easy, but easier to pull off than some of the bigger ideas that I have that I think would require a lot more institutional investment and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So you gave yourself 7.5. All right. So for those of you wondering why I'm scoring 1, I'm super competitive. I grew up in a household of, I'm one of 9 kids, and growing up, we played games constantly. So in the end of this, we're going to tally up our scores, and Jay and I have agreed to donate to fellow nonprofits. I think I'm going to go and say, because we're going to talk about games and stuff like that, I may say Games for Change would be a fun one. So Jay, if you happen to lose to me in points, keeping in mind the game may be rigged because it's my game, I would like you to make a donation to them.
Fair enough. If I end up winning this, which seems unlikely since you're the boss here, I would like you to make a donation to Frontline Foods, which is an organization that supports local restaurants and has them create and package food to deliver to frontline healthcare workers.
Alrighty. So I'm going to do something very dangerous, which is switch my idea that I put. Oh, actually, I'll stay pat. I'll stay pat with this. All right. So thought here is that audio branding is massive and unrecognized by the nonprofit sector. Like if you go back in the day, like you were a Jingle dominated market because of the radio scene in the 20s, right? You're thinking of those like famous slogans that came out. We had a whole podcast on these. And right now, like the only notable, like really big ticket sounds out there that brand you and make you think of a charity, or, you know, think of the Salvation Army ringing a bell, or God help us, the 1-800 Cars for Kids. Right? I'm not going to sing it because it's already in your head. The point is, a volunteer came up with that freaking thing in a basement. Now think about that. They then poured tons of ad dollars behind it. Now we're in a renaissance of podcasting, of Spotify, of audio branding, of, hey, you know, Alexa, or hey, Google, sorry, I just set off all your devices, play the Whole Whale podcast. Hey, Alexa, play the Whole Whale podcast. The point is, we're going to be in an audio first medium moving forward for many different interactions, and a lot of nonprofits could use a lot of audio branding. Now, you can look out there for Jingle services. You can find stuff on Fiverr, but the nuanced thing about nonprofits that we originally realized with Whole Whale is that there's a translation layer missing. What does that mean? Well, anyone can find a development or an analytics shop, but the question is, how do you do it with the mindset of internal stakeholder knowledge of what the nonprofit landscape needs? Now, how do they even know where to put this stuff? So there's a matchmaking service, an agency ready to be made that facilitates either like volunteer generated and how to package, what you actually need as an audio asset. Do you need something as an intro outro for your podcast? Do you need something as an intro outro for consistent use in your YouTube videos so that you have a consistent flow in use rather than just hunting around on a generic, everyone has the same type of music thing, right? That's not helping you. So you have spent so much time, and Jay, you know this, so much time on your image, that logo, those colors, the font, and you've spent zero on your audio. It blows my mind. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes with this. So that's the thought. It's a potential agency marketplace play where you are educating the audience, making a matchmaking service, and then having options to say, here's how you DIY, and here's how we could help you do it or facilitate your volunteers to do it. So I think there's just so much here. It's not a fully crafted idea, but something will exist here. It absolutely will. And you'll be like, oh, that was obvious. So I like ideas that are like, after the fact, you're like, yeah, obviously someone's going to create that. All right, Jay, impact, what do we think? Or questions about the actual idea?
So first off, I like the idea a lot. I think you're correct. There's a missed opportunity here. People spend a lot of money on branding, visual identity, messaging, all that. And then if you do anything with audio at all, it's an afterthought, and your options are either, the $5, sound clip that you buy from Audio Jungle, which is wildly generic, or you pay for something completely custom, which can be prohibitively expensive. So I think there is a middle ground there. I'm curious to know how that would work for the content creators. So when you talk about things like Fiverr or 99 Designs, these platforms that exist that I think on one hand are really good because they can give nonprofits and social enterprises a cost-effective way into getting good design, whether it's audio or logos or whatever it is. But on the other hand, I fear that some of that, hurts the design industry as well by sort of commoditizing some of that stuff. It's really tough for some designers, or I'm assuming like audio engineers, to make money when the cost for some of these things is so low. So I'm curious how you would see the revenue model working, both for the people who sign up to purchase an audio jingle and for the marketplace for the creators that are producing them.
I think the creator point is huge. We have, Greg Thomas was a guy on our team, and like he hustles, right? He doesn't make money unless people pay for things. So like the assumption that you get this stuff for free is always bad, right? If you pay $10, you're going to get a $10 jingle. Do you want that? So one, I think coming back to it is like you start with this education layer. The education layer brings the audience to you, right? So I always look at these two-sided marketplaces very carefully, right? Because I think on the side of like, if you have money and if you've trained an audience, right? You've trained them to know what they're ready to purchase and how and what to look for. Then on the buy side, right? We can get the creators in the door to be like, all right, let's go through and hand select people that have the highest value, highest ratings and rankings on on a Fiverr, pieces like that. Because letting somebody run around a candy store rarely ends up good, right? There is a project management layer there. It is an unknown environment. It's not totally clear what you even want as an audio asset. Even as I say it, you're like, yeah, but we don't do anything with audio, until I started mentioning the freaking YouTube, the podcast, audio pieces, the fact that, by the way, every single platform, Instagram, stories, TikTok, every single challenger are all going to be music-based. You're gonna need some assets. So in that translation layer, I would bring the education first, go out large, and then I would go hand select and just have an application pool be like, hey, we have these trusted lists over here of vendors that we can match you with based on your budget and your needs and what you're looking for. So not totally clear, but that's how I would approach it.
I like that. I think that's good. I think that the main piece for me is, we're a B Corp, Whole Whale's a B Corp. We want to make sure that the workers, the people that are doing the work are, also properly compensated. We're taking care of the people that are doing the hard, effort, the hard work to make these things. So I think as long as that's baked into it, so that the creators aren't taking a hit on it, then I like the idea.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing that into play. And too often I think we commoditize things, especially in the name of the cause, but that doesn't look at the whole ecosystem it plays in. All right, I don't want to take up too much time on this. So impact, I think this is tough because it is narrow. It's narrow in scope with regard to, like, you can help one nonprofit at a time and you're matchmaking going one by one. That's a tough one. I can't get around that, so I don't get great scores there. Viability, I think, this is, an agency model with options for layering in between the high ticket cost and maybe other pieces in there, but it would make money if you got the audience in the door and educated, I believe. And then breadth and scalability, I think I already spoke to that. So MVP, we discussed. How I would start it is I would try to pitch it. I'd create a landing page. I'd put together the educational resources and the 6 ways that your nonprofit should be using audio, and then try to get a customer and then satisfy that customer. Much easier if you yourself are a sound engineer, but here's the piece that will stop a lot of people. A lot of sound engineers think with the eye perspective that I'm just going to generate business for me. You're never going to grow that to scale if it's just you creating all of the assets. So you kind of have to be a little unselfish about this and let other people in the door for different types of genres and types to really grow and expand it to get past the door. So Jay, any other points on this before you give me a score?
Yeah, I really like it. I think there's a niche there that's not being served currently. I think you're spot on that so many organizations, nonprofits especially, are just missing the mark on how they can improve their social, their video with good audio assets. So I really do think there's a market for it. I think, like anything, like we just talked about, it's tough to initially get out there, but if you can start with a couple really good clients, really good case studies, then I think it's viable. So I'll give you a 7 on that one.
Nice. All right, we got a 7. So 7 points. I'm going to give myself an 8, so we're tied.
1 for 1. I love it.
All righty. Next up, Jay, what do you got? Idea.
Okay, so this was going to be a harder one, but I want to talk about mobile gaming for a little bit, because mobile gaming is a massive industry. By one TechCrunch article I read recently, it's $150 billion of that. $150 billion gaming in general, 50% of that coming from mobile games. There is massive amounts of money being made. And there are single platforms like Angry Birds, Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, games like that generate hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars. They spawn movie franchises and things like that. So if there's a way to tap into that marketplace, that industry, and to create a social enterprise version of that. So some sort of game that would allow you to do something fun that's addictive, as like some of these mobile games are. And most of these mobile games operate on the premise that it's free to play, but you can only play so long or do so many things per day, and then you have to wait. Or you can pay real money for additional plays, or real money for virtual objects, so planting virtual trees in your Sim City, things like that. So if there are ways to harness that and get people to pay real money for virtual objects and then funnel that money to organizations like the Arbor Day Foundation to plant actual trees with that, or an organization like Grid Alternatives, or even something like TerraPass for carbon offsets, things like that, to channel that money into something positive. I do think that the barrier for entry on this one is much more difficult. It's a very crowded marketplace, and for every Candy Crush, there's about 1,000 puzzle games that you've never heard of. So it would be tough to break into that marketplace, but if you could do it and do it in a way, there is a potential huge upside for hundreds of millions of dollars to be funneled towards good causes.
So just to reiterate, this is a Games for Good platform where you could, build a city or mimic other successful games, and then the rider on that is that in-app purchases or purchase of the app goes toward the charity.
Correct.
Yeah, the impact I think you're talking about here is a classic TAM assumption, right? Total addressable market. You're like, oh my gosh, this thing is huge. There's tons of money in it, and so all I have to do is just get a couple percentage points of it, and we'll get tons of money. The secret here is the fact that you're talking about 1 billion types of apps, right? Like in the store, it's a fight and it's a bare knuckle brawl to be in there. And then when you do that with, kind of one arm behind your back with, in essence, saying like half of our revenue will go to a nonprofit, you're now fighting with half the available resources of the same competitors that are like cranking these things out of these chop shops to take advantage of that low hanging fruit. So it's like a winner take all marketplace on top of a very fierce long tail to get recognized in the store. So what I see here as impact is maybe not all that maybe you see with your total addressable market assumption.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think there's a potential huge impact, but you're right. It's extremely difficult, I think, to get traction on something like this. And so the barrier to entry is high. Like if it worked, I think you could be wildly successful and make a ton of money, but the chances of it working, I think there's a lot of hurdles. I mean, you specifically mentioned, the mobile gaming industry is fraught with corruption and misogyny, and just, people work, 14, 15-hour days for low pay and things like that. So it's really difficult because you'd have to approach it. I think we want to approach any of these with a B Corp model, right? To make sure that we're taking care of the staff members and that they're adequately paid and not burn out and things like that. I think the real, I think, positive thing for this is I haven't seen a lot of stuff like this yet. So if you could come out with a really fun, addicting game that had this baked into it, I think, and again, there's costs associated with this, but getting media and press around it to be like, hey, this is something that we're tapping into this market. I always go back to like the people that I talk to. There is such an appetite for people that want to do positive things and be supportive of. Look at the B Corp movement in general. Like the longer we've gone on, the more companies we've had, the more traction we've gotten, the more press we've gotten, the more people are aware and interested in supporting organizations that are doing something positive. So if you could take something that they're already doing, playing dumb games on their phone, and put something like this in front of them, I think it would be a little bit easier to get traction than just, a random game that's the same as 50 other games that are already in the marketplace. But it's a big hurdle to clear.
Yeah, so I have a long and fraught history with gaming and different angles on this because I have been involved in building them. I've been involved in marketing them. I've been involved in sunsetting them by the gross. One of the reasons I actually chose Games for Change, a great organization helping frame this type of narrative of how we can use gaming for good. I mean, they had a real renaissance a number of years back, but still, I think the other mindset, and then you kind of originally pitched too, is it certainly the mindless games of clicky for things, can I slice this fruit with this piece, but actually introducing narratives and actual behavior change that is in alignment with the nonprofit, meaning that if you are, supporting a group like the JED Foundation that deals with, issues of depression, how do you create the actual gameplay that generates dopamine and good feelings and education around that topic while also being addicting? Like it is so challenging to thread that needle, but that would be where, it gets me excited. And also I've seen so many nonprofits invest $100,000, $200,000 to generate these like perfect apps and then sort of like realize that they then have to market it. If it's not fun, people won't go after it. the whole point of playing a mindless game is that it's mindless. I don't want to be reminded about cancer. I don't want to be reminded of like the freaking Amazon's burning. I want to like crush some candy, man. So in this, I also need to burst your bubble a little bit. We did find in my research, because I was like, I felt like this existed. There's a group that reached out to me. So if you are thinking about this idea, take a look at this group, pifsquared.com. And so what they're doing is they have a one-stop shop for a mobile app that inside of that has like silly things like go kill zombies and stuff like that. And they're marketing it with a type of gameathons, right? So they'll partner and be like, hey, schedule a gameathon, send all your people to do this app, and that money will go back to you. So like that's the like hesitation of like, I don't think there's a lot of nonprofits itching to send their people to do a thing that's like go kill zombies, but they've got an upcoming one that's like, stop the zombie apocalypse to help veterans. So like that's an interesting one. So what are your thoughts on the sort of impact and viability with those with those George pooping on your idea elements?
Yes, I still think the impact is potentially high, but the viability is low. It sort of balances out in the middle for me. I think, I think it's an idea that warrants more discussion. I think there's possibility there, but you'd have to have a lot of resources to get it started. It's significantly complicated to design and develop a mobile app and then market it, all the things you just mentioned. So I think there's still a lot of potential there, but the viability of it it's a daunting project.
Yeah. I agree. So in terms of MVP, what would be your approach? How would you test this or get started if someone's thinking about like, all right, I want to take a shot at this?
It's a good question. I think I put together just a quick sort of paper prototype of like what the game would look like, maybe reach out to some potential partners, get gaming companies that are already, do some research into gaming companies that are producing really addictive, high quality, high revenue, high profit margin games, seeing if anyone of them might be interested in partnering, reaching out to some nonprofits to seeing if they would be interested in partnering as well. I think it's one that's, if you're going to spin up a company to do it yourself, it's going to be a ton of work. So hiring a bunch of people that can create a mobile game, I think it'd have to be something where you build a partnership with someone who's already really good at producing mobile games and wants to do something positive with the work that they have and the team that they have.
Yeah, I think this falls under the don't get crushed by a feature category, where I see this more as like a blizzard.org initiative where they spin up a foundation and are like, all right, that part of the game, that part of the initiative goes toward good, and like ride that and like pitch myself as like, all right, I'm gonna go work here and I'm gonna like work on this project, give me one developer 10% time to do this piece. And by the way, having a foundation element it can be a really powerful asset as well. Alrighty, I'm going to give you a 4.5 on this one. I don't like it. You can pull up your score with a high score as well, though.
No, I think that's fair. I'm going to give it a 5.5. Just so if 5 is dead average, I think there's slightly more than that. There's potential there, but I fully acknowledge that it would be difficult to pull off. But if you could do it, I think, man, there's a huge market there.
Yeah.
I would personally, I would be all about that kind of thing. I would spend all my time clicking.
Yeah, well, you should check out the PIF squared, because I think they've taken a shot on goal with this thing. I'm going to play with it too. We may have them on the podcast actually if they turn out to be legitimate. I'm going to do my homework first.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds really cool. I'm interested to check that out.
Yeah. Alrighty. So this is a kind of piggyback, because I don't hate at all. I don't mean to like ignore the total addressable market of gaming, because it is massive. And what's more, it's raising millions of dollars. We've had folks from various gaming platforms on talking about how you can raise funds for nonprofits through gaming and that type of experience. So this is actually looking at an esports market and saying, okay, esports is ridiculous in terms of size, and by the way, can be done socially distanced. I think it's going to have an absolute boom on top of what it's already doing. So with regard to the esports market, what happens if you're not familiar, like there's all these teams that are created around each individual game, and these players are becoming individual entities and mini influencers or large influencers. People like Dr. Lupo, who you may not know for a hole in the wall, but has raised literally millions of dollars for like St. Jude by like shooting bad guys on Fortnite. So they're are these layers. There's a layer across, but I think in the same way that pro basketball, NFL, and various folks have like championed a cause, like this is the infancy of that. And by the way, it's a wider pool. And by the way, I think there's an opportunity for esports in general to have and frame, if now here's the game part of you creating either the matchmaking, the marketplace, or the agency piece in this field, right? So a little unshapen, but essentially what happens if you're watching one of these events, imagine if you're watching a basketball game and you're saying, all right, LeBron James, I'm gonna donate $100 to your nonprofit if you only shoot lefty for the next minute. You can have in-game activities and even just taunts. So you can have a message go up on the side that do things that interact with the game. And they kind of already have this in various levels, but as it becomes more formalized, I think there's an opportunity for an official nonprofit even to be created to sort of organize around that, create an overall foundation and a structure for how that happens. Because right now it's happening one-off. And unfortunately what it is individual gamers are sort of going to the loudest voice in the room rather than really thinking about how they distribute and sponsor causes that have been vetted, that are, sort of representative of the causes that even that the audience would be paying attention to, rather than a sort of winner take all. Love St. Jude's, it's incredible, but there's a large opportunity here to diversify that opportunity to more nonprofits, to bring those mini influencers into a marketplace and sort of maybe govern it with either a large foundation that would step in to say, all right, this is the rules of the road and how we like apply and matchmake, or an agency that like is much more of a like an influencer style marketing agency. It's like, hey, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna find you like your people, we're gonna pitch them, we're gonna bring them into the fold, and then like layer in how those dollars come. So a little unshapen, but I like the thoughts more of layering rather than like layering across other games and other activities, rather than trying to fight with one arm behind your back, as I mentioned before, in a marketplace where people are, very cutthroat in the gaming world to like create your own platform or own location. I like looking like the plumbing across. All right, that's my idea. I can shape it more if you get some pings on it.
So I'm at the risk of losing this competition. I'm going to say I really, really like this idea. Esports is such a crazy thing that I don't think people realize how big it is yet and how big it's gotten and the trajectory that it's on. I know I'm old at this point. I'm 41, so I'm just like, I only heard, got into this like a year or two ago, and I was like, wait, what is this? Like, this is crazy. And I was doing a little research before this call, and so fun fact for our listeners here: the Fortnite World Cup, if you win that, the prize for that is $3 million. The prize for winning Wimbledon is 2.4. It's like, this is like, it's massive, and it's
$1
grown
billion market. It's
exponentially.
projected to be $1 billion this year.
Yeah, which is crazy, and like it sort of feels to me like it came out of nowhere, and it's by the end of the 2020s, like it could replace or at least be at the same level as like the four major actual sports. So it's huge, and I feel like it's in its infancy still, though, even as it's growing. So if we can get in on the ground floor of doing something to build those partnerships, to promote nonprofits, to promote sponsorships and good causes, now there's a huge potential upside for that. So I'm curious to hear from you, George, like how you envision that like actually working from like an agency perspective, like how you would go about like creating the framework for it, and how like you as the agency owner or whatever, like what's the profit or what's the revenue model for that, is sort of the middleman between connecting the causes and these players.
Yeah, and I also have to give a shout out to Tiltify. I mentioned them broadly, but Tiltify was the group we had on. We had their CEO on a podcast episode. So you want to like talk about this like gaming layer and how it actually works with people giving for various things you do in a game that lets you DIY. But this is a lateral idea, right? So I would actually start this as an influencer agency almost, and maybe a listed marketplace. So you have to hunt down disparate information of major games and the opportunity sort of, I would say, to sponsor those individuals, right? They have in-game ads and they're approached by like freaking Red Bull and whatnot. And so this is the folks doing it for good. And I would try to come out very loud, frankly, and try to capture some main players. But also, in terms of the marketplace side, your job as that like agency would be to have the stable of new rising talent as well, to then have in your backyard to like shop through and say like, all right, let's matchmake. And like, what are you interested in? And so it's like, you could actually go to the game and be like, what is it that you care about? Because major gamers have a charitable component. If you want to be like Mike, right? If you want to be like Dr. Lupo, like this is what you have to be doing. Let us get what you're interested in and we'll matchmake for you. So I would play the game actually from the influencer side, get them on board and be like, hey, let us represent your charity side. It will look good. It will get you extra press. It will get, like, frankly, what's in it for me has to be there. And then it's easier to go to the nonprofits and be like, hey, would you like free freaking money to be sponsored by this? Your, logo would appear and go that route. Ideally over time, you would make money in that exchange, but I would get a couple wins first.
So you're thinking almost like it sounds more like a traditional sports like talent agent, right? Where you can sort of recruit and handle this piece for the players. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it sort of feels like a win-win with some of the players who are looking for more exposure. They're looking to, hone their own image and being philanthropic, it's just sort of a plus one for their credibility, for their building their own brand, right? I mean, these are, we're sort of comparing these people to star athletes at this point in terms of the money that they're going to generate and whatnot. And so your personal brand is going to be a big component. Some of these people are extremely famous now. So having a philanthropic component that's based on specific issues and causes that they are interested in, I think that works really well.
Yeah.
I like this a lot.
I think it also play the charity listing side, right? So I was a former board chair of America's Charities, which does a lot of workplace giving. They're phenomenal. They also have rolled out an employee assistance fund program, helping a lot of companies. But one of the things they do is they have a vetted list of charities that are part of the pool of people that they know they've gone through, that are ready to sort of be a part of the workplace giving ecosystems that they then control and manage. So the other part of this is a sort of vetted list, and then also preparing the assets necessary to become this, right? Because you don't realize when you get into it, it's not just, oh, here's the logo and go to things. Like, how do you talk about us? What is the short snippet that shows up here? What is the sort of co-branded graphic that would happen? Like, there's a lot of nuance that happens there. So you could create efficiencies by having, hey, here's how much it costs to come into the listing of this. We're going to prep your organization to be picked up. And by the way, anybody can go shopping there. So then you can also push it to the long tail of gamers being like, hey, we want to support somebody. How do we quickly do it? Because guess what? If you are a gamer getting going and like your game is like Clash of Clans and you're like, I don't know, I really care about animals, but like, am I really going to email World Animal Protection? Is that what I'm about to do? What does that look like? Because it's silly. People, you're a who, and it's going to take them more time to manage that than they might even make. So the other game here is running a listing plan. So
what's your first step to get this off the ground?
All right, so we kicked around impact, viability. Viability is like the listing money, and in the exchange, I kind of kicked the can on that. Scale is quite high, I think, once you get the engine going on a two-sided marketplace, but it's risky on a two-sided marketplace. I would make my first match. I would find a couple rising influencers and like build a relationship, being like, hey, love what you're doing, huge fan. We want to pair you with a great cause and a nonprofit. Many of the big ones have it, and we think that being consistent with this narrative as to like how you play and your persona would match very well with it. I just make the first freaking match, and I would just do it with hustle and email and a landing page I built on Squarespace that talked about it, right? I'm an SEO guy. I'd want to have the inbound and cover and probably a feed of news. So I pulled in an automatic feed probably of any gaming piece out there that was raising funds and like talking about how it worked, and then have my own content being like, all right, how do you think about it? How do you find it? And then like contact us. It'll all be lead flow and generate that. So I would make some direct outreach to individuals think have high probability of being recruited into matchmaking, try to make those matches in addition to that landing page. And I think that could be done for under 10K pretty quickly. And if you knew how to do it all, it's like, it could all be sweat equity at that point.
I love it. So I'm gonna give you an 8 on this. I think this is something you should do.
I don't have the freaking time, man. It's on the cutting room floor. What I said is it on the cutting room floor. It kills me. I'm like, someone should do this. Please, I will help you market it. Hey, here's the rule. If you do end up stealing and using one of these ideas, thank you. We wanted it to create in the world, right? The fact that you have an idea means that you have an idea. It's nothing. It's a thought in your head, but it's possible to exist because you have thought it. It already exists in this universe. I love that, but ideas are cheap. It's about the execution. If you can't build it, if you can't manage a team, if you can't think about your employees getting compensated, you don't have anything more than like 2 brain cells to rub together. It's not doing anything in the world. So one of the reasons, and I want to thank you, Jay, for sharing unselfishly and participating, even though you did lose. I thank you thank you for playing. And I wonder if you have any final thoughts to people out there, social entrepreneurs, kicking ideas and thinking around, because you're a guy who's created a company that's been around for over a decade, if I'm correct, which is rare air.
Yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, we're 14 and a half years right now. And the number one thing I would say is that, like, I've had people come up to me and say, like, oh man, I could never do what you do. And I'm like, yeah, you can. I have no formal business training. I was just a programmer that had, the hubris maybe to think that I could do something different. And I've always had a lot of help along the way. But it's entirely possible. There are a lot of great resources out there. The number one piece of advice I give to all people is just, a lot of business is about who you know. So making sure that you are connecting with people, networking. I'm literally on this amazing podcast because I responded to something that George posted on LinkedIn. I was like, that's amazing. This is super cool. And he invited me on to talk about this. There's the people that are in the social impact sector are, like George, are by and large wonderful, generous people that would be happy to talk to you, happy to give you any advice. So make sure you're effectively using all of the networking and connection tools that are available to you, reaching out to people and just trying to build your network. That's going to be huge as you grow your career.
Great advice from an awesome business leader. Well done, Jay. Congratulations. And thank you for playing 2 for 2.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I hope someone takes any or all of these ideas and runs with them. Drop George and I a note if you do. We'd love to follow your progress.